If the United States stays in Afghanistan until it has a solid, stable, Western-style government and a totally vanquished Taliban, that sounds like a recipe for never leaving.
That is a recipe for never leaving. I think that the justifications for the war that the American people overwhelmingly supported after 9/11 were valid. That is to say, in October of 2001, driving the Taliban from power, disrupting al-Qaeda's base of operations there, and putting them on the run was the right thing to do. We accomplished most of that objective in the first few months of that campaign, and the killing of bin Laden provides another reason to draw down. Instead, we've seen President Obama dramatically increase not just the scale of the presence there, but the mission. And the mission is no longer fighting terrorism, it's trying to build a functioning government in a place that hasn't had one for a very, very long time. And it's completely, the costs of such a strategy are not outweighed by the benefits we're getting from it.
But isn't part of the rationale to be able to leave behind something, a place, that doesn't become a harbor for terrorists again?
There are always going to be harbors for terrorism, both in failed states and healthy states. We have to remember some of the most recent attacks perpetrated, thankfully not against the U.S. citizens, but against citizens around the country, around the world by terrorists, have come from healthy states like Spain or the UK. So the notion of trying to build a functioning nation state in a place like Afghanistan or Yemen or Somalia, for that matter, to fight terrorism, again, the costs of such a strategy are completely out of whack.
Well, Lisa, you heard justifications for steeper withdrawals. You say that maybe the one we're contemplating is too steep. How do you respond?
Well, I respond by saying the core al-Qaeda leadership is still in the tribal areas of Pakistan bordering Afghanistan. So still our major problem with terrorism still resides in this region of Afghanistan and Pakistan. The two are related. The terrorists are able to move back and forth, and a lot of people say, well, there's only 100 al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, so why are we there, not in Pakistan? Well, the fact of the matter is, as soon as we pull back from Afghanistan, al-Qaeda will be able to move into Afghanistan. So the problem spans the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And what I would like to say is, if we do withdraw too quickly, and the Taliban is able to regain influence, we are going to be faced with a bigger threat than we faced on September 10th, 2001. Because what you're going to see is the Taliban will have a blowback effect on the terrorists in Pakistan, and therefore putting that country even more vulnerable. And of course, we know Pakistan has nuclear weapons. You know, not to mention the psychological emboldening that will take place of the Taliban and al-Qaeda. I think we have made a major gain in being able to eliminate bin Laden, and the Obama administration certainly deserves credit for that operation. But the fact is, now is the time to press our advantage in Afghanistan.
But it sounds like what you're suggesting is that we should remain engaged in a country that we can invade because of the proximity of a country that we can invade.
No.
That's just as much in Pakistan.
What I'm saying is we do have an opportunity to provide a more stable environment in Afghanistan to support the government there that is anti-Taliban in order to not allow the Taliban to come back to power. I'm not saying it's going to be a perfect democracy, but there are certainly enough Afghans that oppose the Taliban that with our support they can continue to do so. And in Pakistan, it's a different situation. But it is related. We have to support the Pakistan government in its fight against terrorism, but at the same time we have to get the Pakistan government to do more to crack down on the Taliban elements that they support. And the more we talk about withdrawal, the less we encourage Pakistan to go after their Taliban proxies, because then they will simply wait us out. And I think that, unfortunately, if we rapidly withdraw from Afghanistan, we discourage further Pakistani cooperation with our goals, and we undermine our own national security.
Christopher, the Taliban has waxed and waned over the last 10 years. On Election Day 2012, could they be getting stronger?
I think this notion that the Pakistanis are cooperating with us because of our 100,000 troops on the ground in Afghanistan is completely backwards. In fact, the reason why 100,000 troops in Afghanistan or 400,000 troops in Afghanistan ultimately could not succeed in creating a functioning nation state is because of the existence of a safe haven across the border in Pakistan. And Pakistan's goals and objectives in Afghanistan are in conflict with the United States' goals. Pakistan does not want a stable, secure Afghanistan, which they fear would be allied with India. And so the notion that we need to be in Afghanistan to stabilize Pakistan is, I think, completely backwards. In fact, the fear, precisely the fear, that the United States will not be there for the long term is more likely to encourage the Pakistanis to reevaluate what their objectives are in Afghanistan, to work with the government there, and to stop allowing them to play the United States, which they have been doing for 10 years, 10 long years.
Stephen, what about the Taliban, and how should their relative strength dictate what the United States has to do during its continued engagement in Afghanistan?
Well, I think Chris brings up a really good point, which is that 100,000 troops in Afghanistan is doing far more to destabilize the region than it is doing to stabilize the region. When you look at support amongst the insurgency, it's a support for fighting foreign troops. And we should expect this with a military force in a foreign country. People inherently don't like military forces in their foreign country. The reality is that 100,000 troops in Afghanistan is drawing support away from the Pakistani government. It's drawing support for the Taliban. And it didn't take 100,000 troops to get Osama bin Laden, who wasn't living in the tribal region and crossing the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. He was living in a suburb of the capital. And it took good police work and swift action by our special forces. It simply doesn't take 100,000 troops to keep America safe.